Picture this: January 1981, Monte Carlo Rally, the most prestigious event in motorsport. BMW, Porsche, and the entire racing establishment are about to witness something that will shake the automotive world to its core. An Audi driver named Michel Mouton is carving through snow-covered mountain passes at speeds that seem physically impossible, while legendary drivers in rear-wheel drive machines slide sideways, fighting for grip. She's launching out of quarters like she's been fired from a cannon. The secret? 4 rings on the grille and 4 driven wheels underneath. This isn't just a rally car. This is the moment everything changed between Audi and BMW forever, and most people have no idea it even happened. The spectators lining the mountain roads can't believe what they're seeing. Mouton's Audi is defying the laws of physics as they understand them. In one particularly treacherous section covered in packed snow and ice, she accelerates where every other driver is braking. She's not sideways, she's pointed exactly where she wants to go. All 4 wheels clawing for traction, the car squatting and launching forward with brutal efficiency. Rally veterans in the crowd are shaking their heads. Some are angry, convinced Audi must be cheating somehow. Others are simply confused. What they're witnessing shouldn't be possible. A few, the smartest ones, realize they're watching history being made. You see, most people think the German luxury car rivalry is all about Mercedes versus BMW, the 3-pointed star against the blue and white roundel. But there's another story, one that's arguably more fascinating, more dramatic, and more relevant to the cars we drive today. It's the story of how Audi, the underdog nobody took seriously, deployed one risky technology that forced BMW and every other manufacturer to rethink what a performance car could be. This is the story of Quattro, and it's one of the greatest David versus Goliath tales in automotive history. But to understand why this technology was so revolutionary, so risky, and so game-changing, we need to rewind the clock. We need to understand just how dominant BMW was in the 1970s, and how desperately Audi needed something, anything, to survive. In the late 1970s, BMW wasn't just successful, they were untouchable. The ultimate driving machine wasn't just a slogan, it was a statement of fact that nobody could seriously dispute. Their 3 Series had redefined what a sports sedan could be. The 5 Series was the thinking person's luxury car. And at the top, the 6 Series Coupe was pure automotive art on wheels. But here's what made BMW truly special. They had a philosophy, and they stuck to it with religious fervor. Rear-wheel drive, perfect 50-50 weight distribution, natural steering feel. These weren't just engineering choices, they were gospel. BMW believed, genuinely believed, that putting power to the rear wheels created the purest, most engaging driving experience possible. And you know what? They were right. Every automotive journalist, every racing driver, every enthusiast agreed. This philosophy came from BMW's racing heritage. In the 1960s and 70s, they'd proven themselves in touring car racing with models like the 2002 Turbo and the iconic CSL. They understood weight transfer. They understood balance. They understood how to make a car dance through corners with throttle-induced oversteer. It was an art form, and BMW were the masters. Their engineers could tune a chassis so precisely that the car would rotate through quarters with just the right amount of adjustability, giving the driver complete control and confidence. Their success wasn't just on track. In showrooms across Europe and America, BMW was becoming synonymous with a certain type of person. Successful, sophisticated, someone who appreciated precision engineering and dynamic excellence. Think about what BMW represented in the late 1970s. If you pulled up to a business meeting in a BMW 5 Series, people knew you'd made it. You weren't just rich. Anyone could buy a big car. You were discerning. You appreciated quality. You were the type of person who chose the driver's car over the chauffeur's car. BMW had created an aspirational brand that transcended mere transportation. They sold a lifestyle, a philosophy, an identity, and their rear-wheel drive commitment was central to that identity. It wasn't just about how the car performed, it was about what choosing that performance said about you. The yuppie revolution of the 1980s would soon make the BMW 3 Series the ultimate status symbol. But even in the late 1970s, if you wanted a premium car that was genuinely enjoyable to drive, there was BMW, and then there was everyone else trying to be BMW. The numbers told the story. By 1979, BMW was selling over 340,000 cars annually. Their profit margins were healthy, their brand image was stellar, they'd found the formula, and they saw no reason to change it. After all, why would you mess with perfection? Why would you abandon the rear-wheel drive philosophy that had made you the king of the driver's car segment? This confidence, this certainty, would eventually become BMW's biggest blind spot. Meanwhile, over in Ingolstadt, Audi was fighting for survival. And I mean that literally. They were in serious trouble. Let's be honest about something. In the late 1970s, Audi was kind of a joke. And I say that with love because their transformation is what makes this story so incredible. But at that moment in time, they were struggling to figure out who they were and what they stood for. Audi's problem wasn't that they made bad cars. The Audi 80 and 100 were perfectly competent, well-built vehicles. But competent doesn't win hearts. Competent doesn't make people dream. Competent certainly doesn't make people choose your car over a BMW. The brand had a complicated heritage. They were part of Auto Union, which itself was a merger of 4 companies, hence the 4 rings in the logo. They'd been absorbed into the Volkswagen Group. They shared platforms and engines with VW. Everything about Audi screamed sensible, practical, safe. These aren't terrible qualities for a car, but they're not exactly exciting either. They don't make enthusiasts stay up at night reading about your latest model. Here's the brutal truth. Audi was seen as a step up from Volkswagen, but not in the same league as BMW or Mercedes. They were the car you bought because it was well-made and reliable, not because it made your heart race. In the performance and luxury segments where the real money and prestige lived, Audi was basically invisible. Car magazines of the era tell the story. When journalists tested an Audi 100, they praised its build quality and interior space. They appreciated its fuel efficiency and its practical front-wheel drive layout. But the reviews were always lukewarm. There was respect, but no passion. No reviewer ever finished driving an Audi and immediately wanted to drive it again just for the joy of it. Compare that to BMW reviews from the same era. Journalists would wax poetic about the 3 Series' perfect steering weight, its neutral balance, the way it communicated with the driver. They described the experience in emotional terms: joy, connection, engagement. Audi got clinical descriptions of competence. BMW got love letters. Their sales reflected this identity crisis. While BMW was shipping 340,000 cars, Audi was struggling to break 300,000 globally. More importantly, their market position was stagnant. They were trapped in this middle ground. Too expensive to compete with mass-market brands on value. Too boring to compete with BMW on desirability. And it wasn't like Audi wasn't trying. They dabbled in motorsport, entering rallying in the MID-1970S. But they were using front-wheel drive cars in a sport dominated by rear-wheel drive machines. They were competitive in some conditions, but they weren't winning at the highest level. They certainly weren't scary. They weren't keeping BMW or Porsche engineers awake at night. They were just there, participating, making up the numbers. Inside Audi's headquarters in Ingolstadt, the mood was desperate. The question everyone was asking was, how do we break through? How do we become a brand people actually aspire to own? How do we compete with BMW when they've defined what a performance car should be, and we're making front-wheel drive family sedans? The answer would come from the most unlikely place, a winter testing session in the forests of Sweden, and a military vehicle that nobody thought had anything to do with performance cars. The year is 1977. Audi engineer Jort Bensinger is in northern Sweden, conducting winter testing on Audi's vehicles. This is standard procedure. German manufacturers test extensively in Scandinavian winters to ensure their cars can handle extreme conditions. But something happens during this trip that will change automotive history, Something so simple, so obvious in hindsight, that you'll wonder why nobody thought of it before. Bensinger is watching a demonstration of the Volkswagen Iltis, a lightweight military vehicle designed for the German army. The Iltis isn't a sophisticated machine. It's basically a rough, simple, all-terrain vehicle with four-wheel drive for crossing difficult terrain. Think of it as Germany's answer to the Jeep: rugged, utilitarian, no nonsense. The demonstration is meant to show military procurement officers that the Iltis can handle battlefield conditions. But Bensinger isn't thinking about military applications. He's watching the physics of what's happening, watching all four wheels bite into the snow, watching the vehicle maintain momentum where a two-wheel drive car would bog down helplessly. The Iltis driver makes it look easy, almost boring. Point the vehicle where you want to go, press the gas, and it goes there. No drama, no sliding, no fighting for control. Just relentless forward motion. It's not fast or elegant, but it's utterly effective. But as Bensinger watches this ungainly military truck navigate through deep snow that would stop any conventional car dead in its tracks, something clicks in his mind. The Iltis is moving through conditions that would leave a BMW or Mercedes helplessly spinning its wheels. He's thinking about Audi's rallying efforts. He's thinking about how their front-wheel drive cars lose traction coming out of corners, especially in loose or slippery conditions. He's thinking about the fundamental limitation they face against rear-wheel drive competitors. That he's watching this military truck absolutely demolish snow-covered terrain like it's a dry road. The traction is phenomenal. The control is remarkable. Four wheels constantly pulling, constantly finding grip. What if, he wonders, what if we could take this four-wheel drive technology and put it in a performance car? Not a truck, not an off-roader, but a genuine sports coupe that could compete with BMW and Porsche on their own terms. Now, this isn't a completely new idea. Four-wheel drive had existed for decades in trucks and off-road vehicles. Jensen had even put it in the FF sports car back in the 1960s. But nobody had successfully integrated four-wheel drive into a mainstream performance car. Why? Because the technology was heavy, complicated, and expensive. It added significant weight that hurt acceleration and handling. It required complex mechanical systems that were prone to failure. And most importantly, everyone believed it would ruin the driving dynamics that enthusiasts cared about. Conventional wisdom said four-wheel drive was for crawling over rocks, not for carving up mountain roads or conquering racetracks. It was antithetical to everything the performance car world believed in. BMW's philosophy of lightweight, rear-drive purity was considered the correct approach, and trying to mess with that formula seemed foolish. You have to understand, in 1977, suggesting that four-wheel drive belonged in a performance car was like suggesting that a race car should have an automatic transmission. The entire automotive establishment would laugh at you. It went against decades of accumulated wisdom about what made cars fast and fun. But Bensinger is convinced there's something here. He brings the idea back to Audi headquarters in Ingolstadt, expecting skepticism. Instead, he finds a receptive audience. Why? Because Audi has nothing to lose. They're not protecting a successful rear-wheel drive legacy like BMW. They're not married to a specific philosophy that's working for them. They're desperate for differentiation, for something that will make them relevant in the performance conversation. They need a game changer, and this might be it. Ferdinand Piëch, Audi's head of research and development, and grandson of Ferdinand Porsche himself, sees the potential immediately. Piëch is a technical genius with a racing pedigree and a reputation for pursuing unconventional solutions. He's the kind of engineer who looks at established rules and asks, but what if we're wrong? Piëch knows that if Audi is going to compete with BMW, they can't just copy them. BMW is too far ahead, too entrenched in their philosophy. Audi needs to rewrite the rules entirely. They need to find a way to win that BMW hasn't even considered. The project gets the green light, but it comes with massive risks. They're going to invest millions of Deutsche Marks in developing a technology that has never worked in a performance application. They're going to go racing with it before they even sell a single road car, and they're going to bet the company's future on the idea that drivers will embrace four-wheel drive, despite decades of conventional wisdom, saying it's wrong for sports cars. The project gets a name, Quattro, Italian for four, simple, memorable, perfect, a name that would become legendary. Creating the first Quattro wasn't just an engineering challenge. It was like trying to solve a puzzle where the pieces weren't supposed to fit together. Ferdinand Piëch and his team had to overcome fundamental problems that had stumped engineers for decades. The first problem: weight. Traditional four-wheel drive systems were absurdly heavy. They used massive transfer cases, heavy-duty drive shafts, and reinforced components throughout. Adding all that weight to a sports car would kill its performance, making the whole exercise pointless. You'd have all-wheel traction, but a car too heavy to take advantage of it. Piëch's solution was revolutionary in its simplicity. Use a hollow drive shaft that passed through the transmission housing itself, connecting to a rear differential without requiring a separate, heavy transfer case hanging off the back of the gearbox. This was elegant engineering at its finest. By integrating the four-wheel drive system more closely with the transmission, they cut weight dramatically. The entire Quattro system added only about 60 kilograms to the car's weight, far less than anyone thought possible. To put that in perspective, that's about what you'd add by having a passenger in the car. This wasn't just clever packaging, it was a fundamental rethinking of how four-wheel drive systems could work. Traditional systems from the truck world were designed for durability over weight, built to survive abuse and carry heavy loads. Piëch's team threw out those assumptions and started fresh, asking, what's the minimum we need to make this work in a performance application? The answer required manufacturing precision that pushed the limits of what was possible in 1978. The tolerances on that hollow drive shaft were incredibly tight. Get them wrong by even a small amount, and the whole system would vibrate itself apart at high speeds. Audi's engineers spent months perfecting the manufacturing process, dealing with failure after failure until they got it right. The second problem: the center differential. This is the component that splits power between the front and rear axles. Get this wrong, and your car would bind up in tight quarters, fight itself, and be miserable to drive. Get it right, and you'd have seamless power delivery to all four wheels. Audi's engineers developed a manually lockable center differential. Under normal driving, it would operate like a free differential, allowing the front and rear wheels to rotate at different speeds during quartering. But when you needed maximum traction, in snow, gravel, or mud, you could lock it, forcing power to all four wheels regardless of conditions. The third problem: torque split. How do you divide power between the front and rear? BMW would later go with a rear-biased system in their own all-wheel drive cars, maintaining that rear-drive character. But Audi went a different route. They settled on a default 50-50 torque split, with the center differential naturally adjusting the distribution based on grip conditions. This wasn't about maintaining rear-drive character. This was about pure, ruthless traction, about putting power down in any condition at any time. The base car was an Audi Coupe, the sportiest thing in their lineup at the time. But this wasn't just an Audi Coupe with four-wheel drive bolted on. This was a complete reimagining. They added wider fenders to accommodate wider tires. They stiffened the suspension. They upgraded the brakes. And they gave it an engine worthy of the technology, a turbocharged inline-5 making 200 horsepower. In 1980, that was serious power for a car this size. Combined with the all-wheel traction, it was devastating. But here's where Audi made a brilliant, risky decision. They didn't go straight to production. They went racing first. They wanted to prove the concept in the most demanding environment possible: the World Rally Championship. Think about that for a second. Audi was going to take this untested technology, this system that went against everything the racing world believed, and throw it directly into competition against Ford, Fiat, Porsche, and the entire rally establishment. It was audacious. It was borderline insane. It was perfect. November 1980. The Audi Quattro makes its competition debut at the Algarve Rally in Portugal. Nobody knows what to expect. The car looks purposeful, aggressive, different, those boxy fenders, that distinctive shape. But can it actually compete? The answer comes quickly. Yes. Not only can it compete, it dominates. The Quattro wins its first rally, not through experience, not through driver skill alone, but through sheer technological superiority. It's a statement that echoes through the motorsport world. Then comes January 1981, the Monte Carlo Rally. This is the big one, the rally that everyone watches, the event that makes legends. And Audi sends a young French driver named Michel Mouton in a Quattro to take on the establishment. The decision to enter Mouton is itself controversial. Women drivers in international rallying are rare in 1981. The old guard views them with skepticism at best, outright hostility at worst. Mouton has talent. She's proven that in smaller events. But this is Monte Carlo. This is where reputations are made or destroyed. The first special stage is Col de Turini, one of the most famous sections in all of rallying. It's a narrow mountain pass with hundreds of corners, often covered in a mixture of ice, snow, and gravel. It's treacherous, unforgiving, and legendary. Drivers who master Turini become immortal in rally folklore. What happens next is automotive folklore. Mouton, in only her second rally with the car, takes the Quattro to a commanding lead. She's not just fast, she's impossibly fast. On snow-covered mountain passes where rear-wheel drive cars are sliding and struggling for grip, she's accelerating out of corners with a ferocity that seems to defy physics. The mechanical advantage is overwhelming. While drivers in Porsches and Fords are modulating throttle carefully, trying not to spin the rear wheels, Mouton is just burying the throttle and letting the Quattro system sort it out. Four wheels constantly finding traction, constantly pulling the car forward. She doesn't win. A mechanical issue forces her retirement. But the message is sent. The Quattro is fast. Frighteningly fast. And it's not a fluke. This is a fundamental shift in what's possible in rally racing. The retirement is actually a broken driveshaft, an irony not lost on anyone given how innovative that driveshaft design is. But even in retirement, Mouton has made a statement. Rally teams from other manufacturers immediately begin talking to their engineers. Can we do this? Do we have a four-wheel drive program? How fast can we get one? 2 months later, at the Swedish rally, the Quattro's true potential is fully unleashed. Swedish driver Stig Blomqvist takes the car to victory on the snowy, icy roads of Scandinavia. It's not close, it's not a dramatic last-stage showdown. It's domination. Blomqvist wins by over 5 minutes in a sport where victories are usually measured in seconds. The Swedish rally is particularly significant because it's a winter event where traction is everything. It's exactly the kind of rally where four-wheel drive should shine. And it does. The Quattro makes the competition look like they're from a different era of motorsport, which, in a sense, they are. By the end of the 1981 season, the Quattro has won multiple rallies. By 1982, Michel Mouton becomes the first woman to win a world championship rally at the San Remo Rally in Italy. The Quattro is reshaping the sport, forcing every manufacturer to reconsider their approach. But here's what makes this even more remarkable. Audi is doing all of this while simultaneously preparing to sell the Quattro as a road car. The racing program isn't just marketing, it's a proving ground. Every rally, every stage, every victory is validating the technology for potential customers. And those customers are paying attention. Suddenly, Audi isn't boring. Audi isn't safe and sensible. Audi is winning rallies with technology nobody else has. Audi is exciting. The Audi Quattro road car launches in March 1980, but deliveries don't really ramp up until 1981. And it's unlike anything else on the market. It looks aggressive with those boxy flared fenders and that purposeful stance. It sounds angry with that turbocharged 5-cylinder burble. And it goes like hell. Remember, this is 1981. Most performance cars are rear-wheel drive. You learn to drive them gently in the wet, carefully in the snow. You accept that winter means parking your sports car and driving something sensible. That's just how it works. The Quattro rewrites that script. You can drive this car in any weather, any condition, and it just grips and goes. It's not perfect. The turbo has lag, the steering is a bit heavy, the interior isn't as refined as a BMW. But when you put your foot down, especially in conditions where rear-wheel drive cars are helpless, the Quattro is in a different universe. And people notice, especially in markets where winter driving is a reality. Germany, Scandinavia, the northern United States, the Quattro becomes a revelation. You can have your performance car and actually use it year-round. This is a freedom that BMW and Mercedes can't offer. Early Quattro owners become evangelists. There are stories from Munich dealers of BMW customers coming in for test drives and mentioning, almost sheepishly, that they're also looking at the Quattro. The BMW salespeople initially dismiss it. It's an Audi, after all, but those customers keep coming back with the same concern. What about winter? What about when the roads are wet? One dealer in Hamburg tells a revealing story from 1982. A customer who's owned 3 BMW 5 Series in a row comes in to order his 4th. He's BMW's ideal customer, loyal, affluent, totally bought into the brand. But during the discussion, he mentions he's also considering the Audi 200 Quattro. The salesman asks why. The customer's answer is simple. I'm tired of parking my car for 3 months every winter. That's the Quattro's power in a single sentence. It's not just about performance or capability, it's about usability, about not having to compromise, about the frustration of owning a performance car you can only truly enjoy in perfect conditions. The automotive press goes crazy for it. Road and Track calls it a landmark automobile. Car and Driver marvels at its all-weather capability. Even British journalists, traditionally skeptical of German engineering that isn't from Porsche or BMW, admit that Audi has created something special. But here's the thing that's easy to miss. The Quattro isn't just about technology. It's about what that technology enables. It's about the confidence you feel when you can use all your car's performance in any condition. It's about the realization that maybe, just maybe, BMW's rear-wheel drive gospel isn't the only path to driving excellence. And that realization is starting to terrify BMW. For the first time in years, someone has found a way to compete with them that doesn't involve trying to out-BMW them. Audi has changed the game, and BMW isn't ready for it. At BMW headquarters in Munich, the initial reaction to the Quattro is dismissive. This is predictable. When you're on top, when your philosophy has served you well for decades, you don't immediately panic when someone tries something different. The BMW engineers look at the Quattro and see its flaws. They see the added weight of the four-wheel drive system. They see the complexity, the additional components that can fail. They see a car that, on a dry racetrack, isn't necessarily faster than a well-driven rear-wheel drive BMW. And they cling to their philosophy. Rear-wheel drive, they insist, is still superior for pure driving dynamics. It's lighter, simpler, more intuitive. The Quattro might be good in the snow, but how often do enthusiasts really drive in the snow? Isn't the whole point of a sports car to enjoy it on a nice day on a winding road? This is the thinking inside BMW in the early 1980s. They're not completely wrong, but they're missing the bigger picture. They're focused on the technical details and ignoring the market shift happening beneath their feet. Because here's what BMW fails to understand initially. The Quattro isn't just about snow performance. It's about usability. It's about year-round capability. It's about a psychological shift in how people think about performance cars. Before the Quattro, performance cars were seen as fair-weather friends. You accepted their limitations because the pleasure you got on those perfect driving days was worth it. But the Quattro shows that you don't have to accept those limitations. You can have it all. By 1983, Audi's rally dominance is becoming embarrassing for everyone else. They win the World Rally Championship manufacturer's title. Hannu Mikkola wins the Drivers' Championship. The Quattro has won rallies in every condition: snow, gravel, tarmac. It's not a one-trick pony, it's the real deal. Then suddenly, everyone in rallying is scrambling to develop their own four-wheel drive systems. Peugeot, Lancia, Ford, they all realize that without four-wheel drive, they simply can't compete at the highest level. Audi has fundamentally changed the sport. Within a few years, every competitive rally car will be four-wheel drive. But it's not just in rallying where Audi's impact is felt. On the road, the Quattro is creating a new category, the all-weather performance car, and customers are responding. Sales exceed Audi's expectations. More importantly, the Quattro is changing Audi's brand image. Suddenly, Audi dealers are seeing a different type of customer walking through their doors. Not just people looking for a sensible, well-built German car, but enthusiasts. People who previously would have bought BMWs. People who are excited about technology, about capability, about owning something that feels genuinely advanced. The Quattro becomes a halo car, the kind of vehicle that makes people reconsider the entire brand. Even if you can't afford a Quattro, the fact that Audi makes it changes how you think about the Audi 80 or 100. Maybe Audi isn't boring after all. Maybe they're actually pioneers. This is marketing gold. This is exactly what Audi needed. They're no longer in BMW's shadow. They're doing their own thing, and it's working. They're not trying to be BMW. They're trying to be better than BMW in ways BMW hasn't considered. By the MID-1980S, Audi starts expanding Quattro technology beyond just the performance coupe. They offer it on the Audi 80 sedan, then the 100, then the 200. The technology is becoming democratized, available to regular customers who just want the security and capability it provides. This democratization is strategically brilliant. The original Quattro coupe is expensive, about 50,000 Deutsche Marks in Germany, which puts it in Porsche 911 territory. Most customers can't afford that, but an Audi 80 Quattro? That's only slightly more expensive than a comparable BMW 3 Series, and it gives you all-wheel drive that BMW can't match. The Audi 80 Quattro becomes particularly important in this story. It's a normal-looking sedan, not aggressive or intimidating like the Quattro Coupe. It looks like a car an accountant would drive. But underneath it has that same all-wheel drive system that's dominating rallies. You can get genuine rally-proven technology in a family car. Customers respond enthusiastically. In Germany, where winter roads can be challenging, the Quattro models start outselling the front-wheel drive versions in many regions. Dealers report that customers are specifically coming in asking for Quattro, willing to pay the premium even on base models. The technology has become a genuine selling point, not just a performance feature. This is strategic brilliance. BMW built their reputation on rear-wheel drive being the enthusiast's choice. Audi is building their reputation on Quattro being the smart person's choice. The person who wants performance but doesn't want to compromise on usability. The person who lives in the real world, not just on perfect driving roads. And it's working. Audi sales are growing. More importantly, their brand perception is transforming. They're no longer the boring alternative to BMW. They're becoming BMW's sophisticated rival, the brand for people who appreciate advanced technology and year-round capability. But BMW still isn't moving. They're watching all of this happen, and they're holding firm to their rear-wheel drive philosophy. It's almost admirable in its stubbornness, or maybe it's just arrogance. Either way, they're about to get a wake-up call that they can't ignore. The wake-up call comes from an unexpected place, not from enthusiasts, not from racing, but from the everyday premium car buyer, especially in markets where winter weather is a reality. In Germany, Scandinavia, and the northern United States, BMW dealers are noticing something troubling. They're losing sales to Audi, not because BMW's cars have gotten worse, but because customers are starting to ask, why should I buy a rear-wheel drive car when I can have all-wheel drive? The shift is particularly pronounced in places like Denver, Minnesota, and upstate New York. These are traditional BMW strongholds, affluent areas with educated buyers who appreciate premium German engineering. But now, those same buyers are cross-shopping Audi in a way they never did before. One BMW dealer in Denver describes the frustration of losing a sale to an Audi 4000 Quattro. The customer was a physician, exactly BMW's demographic. He owned 2 BMWs previously. He loved them. But he worked early mornings, leaving for the hospital before the roads were plowed. He had too many white-knuckle commutes in his rear-drive 3 Series. The Audi wasn't as fun to drive on a perfect day, he admitted. But it gave him confidence every single day. That was worth more. These aren't isolated stories. Across northern markets, BMW is bleeding customers to Audi for the first time in their history. The loss isn't catastrophic. BMW is still selling well overall, but it's a trend, and trends have a way of accelerating if you don't address them. This is the question BMW doesn't have a good answer for. They can talk about driving purity and weight distribution all they want, but when a customer is imagining their morning commute in January, those arguments become abstract. The Quattro's promise of confidence in all conditions becomes concrete. BMW's marketing tries to counter. They emphasize their winter tire programs. They talk about how skilled drivers don't need all-wheel drive. They lean into the ultimate driving machine positioning. But it's not working as well as it used to. By the MID-1980S, Audi is stealing market share in key segments. The Audi Quattro is taking sales from the BMW 3 Series. The Audi 100200 Quattro is competing effectively with the BMW 5 Series. For the first time in years, BMW's growth in these markets is slowing. Inside BMW, the debate becomes heated. The old guard, the engineers who built BMW's reputation on rear-wheel drive purity, are resistant. They still believe that four-wheel drive corrupts the driving experience. They point to the extra weight, the complexity, the dilution of that perfect rear-drive feel. There are legendary meetings at BMW headquarters where engineers literally shout at each other about this. The veteran chassis engineers argue that BMW's soul is in rear-wheel drive, that abandoning it even partially would be betraying everything the brand stands for. They invoke the ghosts of BMW's racing heritage, the 2002, the CSL, all the cars that made BMW what it is. But a new generation of BMW engineers is looking at the data and seeing something different. They're seeing that in most real-world driving conditions, the average customer isn't exploring the limits where rear-wheel drive's advantages matter, but they are experiencing the confidence and security that all-wheel drive provides. One young engineer presents data from customer surveys showing that a significant percentage of BMW owners, especially in northern markets, are driving more cautiously in winter, deliberately underusing their car's performance because they don't trust the grip. The Quattro owners, by contrast, are using their car's full performance year-round. Which ownership experience is actually better? The internal conflict is intense. BMW's identity is wrapped up in this rear-wheel drive philosophy. It's not just an engineering decision, it's who they are. To add all-wheel drive feels like admitting that Audi was right, that BMW's decades of certainty were misplaced. But the market is speaking, and it's saying something BMW can't ignore. Customers want all-wheel drive, not instead of rear-wheel drive necessarily, but as an option. They want the choice. The breakthrough comes from an unlikely source, the BMW 3 Series rally program. BMW has been competing in rallying, trying to keep up with the Quattro, and they're getting destroyed, not because their drivers aren't skilled, not because their cars aren't well engineered, but because rear-wheel drive simply can't compete with four-wheel drive in rally conditions. This creates an interesting dynamic inside BMW. They can't deny the evidence from competition. In rallying, where performance is everything and comfort is irrelevant, four-wheel drive is clearly superior. If it's better for racing, how can they continue arguing it's worse for road cars? Finally, in 1985, BMW makes a decision. They will develop their own all-wheel drive system. But, and this is crucial, they will do it the BMW way. They won't copy Audi. They won't abandon their rear-wheel drive philosophy. They'll create a system that preserves rear-drive character while adding all-wheel capability. The project is called xDrive, though it won't carry that name publicly for years. The philosophy is different from Quattro. Where Audi went for a balanced 50-50 torque split, BMW decides on a rear-biased system. Under normal driving, the car remains rear-wheel drive. Only when slip is detected does the front axle engage. The idea is to preserve that rear-wheel drive feel that BMW enthusiasts love while providing all-wheel security when needed. It's a compromise. an attempt to have it both ways. And honestly, it's pretty clever engineering. But here's the thing. It takes BMW years to bring this to market. Years during which Audi is refining Quattro, expanding it across their lineup, and cementing their reputation as the all-weather performance brand. BMW's philosophical resistance has cost them time they'll never get back. The first BMW all-wheel drive production car doesn't arrive until 1985 with the 325i with all-wheel drive. It's good, competent, very BMW, but it's also years late to a party that Audi started. And by this point, Quattro isn't just a technology, it's a brand within a brand. It's an identity. And it's not just BMW that Audi has forced to react. By the MID-1980S, Mercedes-Benz is developing 4MATIC. Porsche is experimenting with all-wheel drive for the 959 supercar and will eventually put it in the 911. Across the industry, Audi's risky bet is being validated as manufacturers rush to offer their own systems. The Mercedes-Benz response is particularly interesting. Mercedes has traditionally been about luxury and comfort, not performance. But even they can't ignore what Quattro has proven. Their 4MATIC system debuts in 1985 on the W124 E-Class, and Mercedes marketing emphasizes safety and security, very Mercedes values, enabled by all-wheel drive. Porsche's journey is even more dramatic. The 959 supercar of the MID-1980S is conceived as a technology showcase, and it includes a sophisticated all-wheel drive system. This is Porsche, the company that built its reputation on rear-engine, rear-drive sports cars. Even they're admitting that for maximum performance, you need 4 driven wheels. By the late 1980s, Porsche is seriously considering all-wheel drive for the 911, their most iconic model. This is heresy to Porsche purists, but the engineers can't deny the performance benefits they're seeing. When the 993 Generation 911 arrives in the 1990s, all-wheel drive versions become available. Porsche has followed Audi's lead. But Audi has the first mover advantage. They have the rally victories. They have the brand association. When people think all-wheel drive performance car, they think Quattro. BMW system, Mercedes system, Porsche's system. They're all playing catch-up to Audi's innovation. This is unprecedented in the German automotive hierarchy. Traditionally, Mercedes innovates luxury. BMW innovates driving dynamics. Porsche innovates sports cars, and everyone else follows. But here's Audi, the scrappy underdog, leading the way, and the big three are following. The impact on the broader automotive industry is profound. By the late 1980s and into the 1990s, all-wheel drive is becoming a standard offering in the premium sedan segment. You can get a Mercedes E-Class with 4MATIC, a BMW 5 Series with xDrive, an Audi A6 with Quattro. It's no longer exotic, it's expected. And it's not just German brands. Japanese manufacturers are watching too. Subaru sees an opportunity and makes all-wheel drive central to their identity. Nissan develops their Atessa system for the Skyline GTR. Toyota's Lexus brand launches with all-wheel drive options. All of this traces back to that moment in 1977 when Jörg Bensinger watched a military truck drive through Swedish snow and thought, what if? All of this comes from Audi's desperate gamble that they could succeed by changing the rules rather than playing by BMW's. But let's talk about what's happening to Audi during all of this. Because this isn't just a story about technology defeating philosophy. It's a story about brand transformation, about what happens when you give a struggling company a genuine competitive advantage. The Quattro halo effect is extraordinary. Remember, in the late 1970s, Audi was struggling to sell 300,000 cars a year. By 1985, they're approaching 400,000. By 1990, they'll surpass 600,000. That's massive growth in a mature, competitive market. But it's not just volume. It's the kind of customers they're attracting. Audi is moving upmarket. Their average transaction price is increasing. They're competing more directly with BMW and Mercedes on premium models, and they're winning. Walk into an Audi dealership in 1987, and you'll see a different clientele than 5 years earlier. There are still the practical-minded buyers who want a well-built German car. But now there are also enthusiasts, people who talk about turbo lag and rally victories, people who've come specifically because they want Quattro technology. The dealership experience changes too. Audi realizes they can't just sell on practicality anymore. They need to match BMW's premium showroom experience. Dealerships get upgraded. Sales staff get trained on the technical advantages of Quattro, learning to explain center differentials and torque distribution in ways that make customers feel smart for choosing Audi. The design language evolves too. Audi starts to embrace a more sophisticated technical aesthetic. Clean lines, precise details, an emphasis on lighting technology that becomes an Audi signature. They're building a complete premium brand identity, with Quattro as the technological foundation. By the 1990s, Audi introduces a new generation of models that cement their place in the premium segment. The Audi A4 takes on the BMW 3 Series directly. The A6 competes with the 5 Series and E-Class. The A8 becomes Audi's flagship, a legitimate S-Class competitor. The A4 launch in 1994 is particularly significant. This is Audi's direct assault on BMW's core market. The 3 Series has been BMW's cash cow, the car that defines them for most customers. Audi is now going after it with a car that's specifically designed to appeal to 3 Series buyers, but with Quattro as a key differentiator. The A4 is handsome, well-built, and offers Quattro at a price point that makes it accessible to a broad audience. More importantly, Audi's marketing makes clear that this isn't just a BMW alternative, it's a BMW competitor. The tagline practically writes itself, all the German engineering you expect, with all-wheel drive that BMW can't match at this price point. BMW responds, of course. The E36 Generation 3 series that competes with the first A4 is an excellent car, but BMW's all-wheel drive system is still expensive and not widely available. Audi has a window of opportunity, and they exploit it ruthlessly. And all of these models are available with Quattro. It's become so central to Audi's identity that many customers simply assume all Audis have it. In many markets, Quattro models become the default, with front-wheel drive versions being the exception rather than the rule. This is strategic brilliance. Audi has taken what started as a desperate innovation and turned it into their defining characteristic. Mercedes has luxury, BMW has driving dynamics. Audi has Quattro, and by extension, advanced technology and year-round capability. The rivalry with BMW intensifies through the 1990s and 2000s, but it's a different kind of rivalry now. It's not David versus Goliath anymore. It's two titans, each with their own philosophy, their own strengths, competing for customers who now have genuine choices. BMW doubles down on rear-wheel drive character, even in their all-wheel drive models. They develop increasingly sophisticated X-drive systems that maintain that rear-biased feeling. They're not abandoning their identity. They're evolving it to meet market demands while staying true to their philosophy. Audi, meanwhile, continues to refine Quattro. They develop different versions for different applications, a sport differential for the performance models, a more efficient system for everyday cars, Ultra Quattro that can disconnect the rear axle entirely when not needed for improved fuel economy. The technology advances, but the fundamental advantage Audi created remains. They were first, they proved it in competition, and they built an entire brand identity around it. That's impossible to replicate, even if you eventually develop equivalent technology. Let's talk about what all of this means for the cars we drive today. Because the Quattro's impact didn't stop in the 1980s or 90s. It fundamentally reshaped what we expect from performance cars, luxury cars, and even everyday vehicles. Think about the premium car market today. Nearly every luxury sedan, wagon, and SUV offers all-wheel drive. It's not an exotic feature, it's a standard expectation. If you're shopping for a BMW 3 Series, Mercedes C-Class, or Audi A4, you're probably getting all-wheel drive unless you specifically opt out of it. In many northern markets, the penetration rate for all-wheel drive in premium sedans exceeds 70%. In places like Colorado, Minnesota, and upstate New York, Finding a rear-wheel drive BMW on dealer lots is actually challenging. The inventory is overwhelmingly all-wheel drive because that's what customers demand. This normalization of all-wheel drive in performance and luxury cars is Audi's legacy. They prove that you don't have to choose between driving enjoyment and year-round usability. They showed that advanced technology can enhance rather than dilute the driving experience. The performance car landscape has been completely transformed. Modern sports cars and performance sedans are increasingly all-wheel drive. The Porsche 911 Turbo and GT3 RS use all-wheel drive for maximum performance. The Lamborghini Huracan and Aventador are all-wheel drive. The Mercedes-AMG E63 uses 4MATIC Plus. The BMW M5 uses xDrive. Think about that last one for a moment. The BMW M5, BMW's ultimate performance sedan, the car that's supposed to represent pure driving dynamics in their purest form, uses all-wheel drive. That would have been unthinkable in 1980. BMW fought against this for years, but eventually even they had to admit that for maximum performance, you need four driven wheels. These are vehicles where performance is everything, where every pound and every component must justify its existence. And they all use all-wheel drive because, in the end, Audi was right. The traction advantage, the ability to deploy power effectively, outweighs the drawbacks of added complexity and weight. Even in motorsport, where tradition dies hard, Audi's influence is clear. Rally racing is entirely all-wheel drive now. There isn't a competitive two-wheel drive rally car at the top level. The technology Audi introduced has become so dominant that the alternative doesn't exist anymore. The rally world tried to resist initially. The FIA, rallying's governing body, considered banning four-wheel drive after Audi's early dominance. Some argued it gave too much of an advantage, that it was making driver skill less important. But the genie was out of the bottle. Once Audi proved what was possible, everyone else had to follow or accept irrelevance. By 1983, Lancia had their own four-wheel drive car, the 37 successor, the Delta S4. Peugeot was developing the 205 T16 with four-wheel drive. Ford was working on the RS200. The Group B era of the MID-198OS became an arms race of increasingly powerful, increasingly sophisticated all-wheel drive machines. And it all started with Audi's Quattro. The Group B cars became legendary, too powerful, too fast, ultimately too dangerous. The era ended after fatal accidents in 1986. But the lesson about four-wheel drive supremacy never went away. When rallying evolved into the modern WRC era, every competitive car was four-wheel drive. Audi had fundamentally changed the sport forever. And it spread beyond performance applications. Family SUVs, crossovers, even some mainstream sedans now offer or include all-wheel drive. The technology has trickled down from Audi's expensive rally car to affordable vehicles that millions of people drive every day. But perhaps the most significant impact is psychological. The Quattro changed how we think about the relationship between car and conditions. Before Quattro, you accepted that weather limited your car's capability. After Quattro, that limitation became optional. Consider how people talked about performance cars before Quattro. You'd hear phrases like, "It's a summer car," or "I park it when it snows." These weren't complaints, they were just statements of fact. Performance cars were rear-wheel drive, and rear-wheel drive was challenging in bad weather. You accepted this trade-off because the joy you got on perfect days was worth the limitations on imperfect ones. Quattro questioned that entire framework. Why should you have to accept those limitations? Why should enjoying your car's performance be dependent on the weather being perfect? What if the car could adapt to conditions instead of forcing you to adapt your driving? This mental shift extended beyond just all-wheel drive. It opened up a broader conversation about what performance cars could and should be. If you didn't have to accept rear-wheel drive's winter limitations, what other accepted truths about performance cars were actually just conventions that could be challenged? This shift in thinking has influenced everything from how we shop for cars to how manufacturers position their products. All-wheel drive has become a selling point, a checkbox on the feature list. a technology that adds value even if you never truly need it. The peace of mind it provides is itself valuable. For Audi specifically, Quattro remains central to their brand identity 40 years after its introduction. The four rings logo and the Quattro name are inseparable. It's what makes an Audi in the minds of many customers. They've expanded the technology into their electric vehicles with electric Quattro, using motors instead of mechanical differentials to distribute power. The name and the concept persist even as the underlying technology evolves. That's powerful branding. And they've maintained performance credentials through Quattro. The RS models, RS3, RS4, RS5, RS6, RS7, are all Quattro. These are genuine performance machines that compete with BMW M and Mercedes AMG, and their all-wheel drive traction is a key competitive advantage, especially in less than perfect conditions. For BMW, the journey has been more complicated. They've embraced xDrive while trying to maintain their rear-wheel drive identity. Modern BMW M cars offer both rear-drive and xDrive variants, letting customers choose their philosophy. It's a compromise that would have been unthinkable in the 1970s. This dual approach is actually quite clever. BMW has essentially admitted that there isn't one right answer. There are different answers for different priorities. Want maximum engagement and that classic rear-drive feel? Choose the rear-drive M3. Want maximum performance and year-round usability? Choose the xDrive version. Both are legitimate choices for different reasons. But even this compromise represents a fundamental shift in BMW's thinking. The fact that they're offering xDrive versions of M cars at all means they've accepted that all-wheel drive has a place in performance driving. The 1970s BMW would have considered this heresy. The modern BMW sees it as evolution. The purest argument, that rear-wheel drive is inherently superior for driving dynamics, hasn't completely disappeared. There are still enthusiasts who prefer the feeling of a rear-drive car, who appreciate its simplicity and that special balance it provides. And they're not wrong. On a perfect day, on a perfect road, a rear-drive car can be sublime. But Audi forced everyone to confront a truth that the automotive establishment was reluctant to acknowledge. Most driving isn't on perfect days, on perfect roads. Most driving is in traffic, in weather, in conditions where all-wheel traction provides real, tangible benefits. The Quattro didn't make rear-wheel drive obsolete, it made it optional. It expanded what was possible. And in doing so, it democratized performance in a way that BMW's philosophy never could. So here's what's remarkable about this whole story. Audi didn't just create a successful product. They didn't just win some rallies and sell some cars. They fundamentally altered the trajectory of automotive engineering and changed how the entire industry thinks about traction, performance, and capability. They did this not through superior resources or deeper pockets, but through necessity. BMW's dominance, BMW's certainty, BMW's unwillingness to question their own philosophy, these things created an opening. And Audi, desperate and struggling, was willing to risk everything on an idea that everyone else thought was wrong. This is one of the greatest underdog stories in automotive history. It's a masterclass in innovation through necessity. It's proof that sometimes the companies that are struggling, that have everything to gain and nothing to lose, are the ones that make the breakthroughs that reshape industries. But it's also a cautionary tale for the established players. BMW in the late 1970s was convinced they had found the ultimate formula. They were so certain of their philosophy that they couldn't see the market shifting beneath their feet. They were right about rear-wheel drive dynamics, but they were wrong about what customers actually wanted and needed. By the time BMW accepted that all-wheel drive had a place in performance, cars Audi had already won the philosophical battle. The market had moved, customer expectations had changed, and Audi, the brand nobody took seriously, had become the company that forced everyone else to follow. Today, when you look at an Audi A4 Quattro and a BMW 330i xDrive sitting side by side in a showroom, they seem like equivalent choices. Both offer all-wheel drive. Both are premium sedans with strong performance credentials. Both are products of world-class German engineering. But that equivalence is itself a victory for Audi. They started from a position of weakness and forced BMW to meet them on Audi's terms. They proved that there wasn't just one right way to build a performance car, and they showed that advanced technology could be a competitive advantage just as powerful as handling purity or heritage. The rivalry continues today, of course. BMW and Audi compete intensely in every segment, from compact sedans to high-performance sports cars. They push each other to innovate, to improve, to offer customers ever more sophisticated and capable vehicles. But the balance of power is forever changed. Audi isn't the underdog anymore. They're a peer, a genuine rival, a company that commands respect and consideration, and that transformation, that journey from irrelevance to prominence, started with one risky technology and a belief that the automotive establishment might be wrong about what was possible. The Quattro system itself continues to evolve. Modern versions use electronic controls, predictive algorithms, and torque vectoring to distribute power with millisecond precision. The mechanical ingenuity of that original hollow drive shaft has given way to sophisticated software that can anticipate and respond to changing conditions faster than any human driver could. Audi's Ultra Quattro system, introduced in the 2010s, can actually disconnect the rear drive shaft entirely when all-wheel drive isn't needed, improving fuel economy. The car operates in front-wheel drive mode most of the time, but the rear axle can re-engage in just milliseconds when sensors detect the need for additional traction. This would have seemed like science fiction to the engineers developing the original Quattro. They were working with purely mechanical systems, differentials, drive shafts, physical components, engaging and disengaging. The fact that modern systems can predict when you'll need traction based on steering angle, throttle position, and road conditions, then preemptively adjust torque distribution, is remarkable. The Sport differential, available on Audi's RS models, takes this even further. It can actively distribute torque not just front to rear, but also between the left and right rear wheels. In a high-speed corner, it can send more power to the outside rear wheel, effectively helping rotate the car. It's using all-wheel drive not just for traction, but as a handling tool. But the core concept remains unchanged. Four-driven wheels, constantly finding traction, constantly working to put power to the ground effectively. It's the same idea that Jörg Bensinger saw in that Swedish forest in 1977, just refined and perfected over 4 decades of development. And it's not just about technology anymore. Quattro has transcended its origins as an engineering solution and become a symbol. It represents Audi's willingness to innovate, to challenge conventions, to pursue technical excellence. It's the foundation of their brand identity in a way that few technologies become for any automaker. For enthusiasts and historians, the Quattro era represents something special. It's a reminder that the automotive world isn't static, that established hierarchies can be disrupted, that innovation can come from unexpected places. It's proof that the underdog can win if they're willing to take risks, that the comfortable and successful won't. If you want to understand modern Audi, you have to understand Quattro, not just what it does mechanically, but what it represents symbolically. It's the technology that saved the company, that gave them an identity, that allowed them to compete with BMW and Mercedes on equal terms. And if you want to understand the modern premium car market, you have to understand what Quattro changed. It made all-wheel drive mainstream. It shifted customer expectations. It forced every manufacturer to offer all-weather capability. The automotive landscape we know today exists in part because of what Audi started in the early 1980s. There's a beautiful irony in all of this. BMW spent the 1970s perfecting rear-wheel drive dynamics, convinced they had found the ultimate answer. They were the establishment, the standard-bearer, the company everyone else tried to emulate, and they were blindsided by a company they didn't take seriously pursuing a technology they didn't believe in. Audi's success with Quattro didn't destroy BMW. Far from it. BMW remains hugely successful, a cornerstone of the automotive world, a brand synonymous with driving pleasure. But Audi forced them to evolve, to question their assumptions, to admit that maybe there wasn't just one right answer. That's healthy for the industry. Competition drives innovation. When companies are challenged, when they're forced to reconsider their positions, better products emerge. The fact that you can walk into a BMW dealership today and buy an M3 with xDrive is a direct result of Audi's Quattro forcing BMW to adapt. And the customer wins. You have choices now. You can get rear drive purity if that's what you want. You can get all-wheel traction if that's what you need. You can get systems that try to balance both philosophies. The market has expanded in ways that serve different priorities and preferences. Looking forward, the principles that made Quattro successful remain relevant, even as the automotive world transforms. We're moving into an era of electric vehicles, autonomous driving, and fundamentally different powertrains. But the core idea, that superior traction enables superior performance, doesn't change. Audi's electric vehicles use electric motors to achieve Quattro functionality, eliminating mechanical differentials entirely. The motors can respond to slip in milliseconds, distributing torque with precision that mechanical systems can't match. It's Quattro reimagined for a new technological era. Other manufacturers are doing similar things with their electric vehicles. But again, Audi has the brand association, the legacy, the credibility that comes from being first. When they call their electric all-wheel drive system Electric Quattro, it carries weight that a generic all-wheel drive label doesn't. The story of Audi versus BMW, of Quattro challenging rear-wheel drive orthodoxy, teaches us something important about innovation. Breakthrough technologies often come from unexpected places, from companies that are hungry rather than comfortable, from people who are willing to question assumptions that everyone else accepts. There's a broader lesson here about market leadership and the dangers of complacency. BMW in 1977 was convinced they had found the ultimate formula. They had the data, they had the racing success, they had the customer loyalty. Everything confirmed their rear-wheel drive philosophy. Why would they question it? But market leadership can breed a kind of blindness. When you're successful, when your approach is working, it's incredibly difficult to see alternatives. You interpret everything through the lens of your existing philosophy. BMW looked at four-wheel drive and saw weight, complexity, diluted dynamics. They didn't see opportunity because they didn't need to. Audi, struggling and desperate, had the hunger that BMW lacked. They couldn't afford to dismiss unconventional ideas. They needed something transformative, not incremental. That desperation, that need for a game changer, made them open to possibilities that BMW dismissed out of hand. BMW wasn't wrong about rear-wheel drive dynamics. Their engineering was sound. Their philosophy was coherent. Their cars were excellent. But they made the mistake of thinking their way was the only way, that their philosophy was universal truth, rather than one approach among possible approaches. Audi didn't prove BMW wrong. They proved that there was room for a different answer. They showed that you could achieve driving excellence through different means, that traction was just as important as balance, that year-round capability had real value that couldn't be dismissed. This is how industries evolve, not through one approach conquering all others, but through multiple philosophies coexisting, pushing each other, creating options and choices that serve different needs and preferences. The German automotive world is richer, more diverse, more interesting, because Audi didn't try to out-BMW. They created their own identity. The next time you see an Audi with those 4 rings on the grille and that Quattro badge on the fender, remember what it represents. It's not just a 4-wheel drive system. It's a company's survival, a philosophy made manifest, a risky bet that paid off beyond anyone's wildest expectations. It's the underdog that became a titan. It's the technology that changed an industry. It's proof that sometimes the conventional wisdom is wrong, that the established order can be challenged, that innovation can come from the most unlikely places. And it's a reminder that in the automotive world, as in life, the willingness to take risks and challenge assumptions can lead to transformations that nobody saw coming. Audi gambled everything on Quattro, and in doing so they didn't just save themselves. They changed what it means to build a performance car. forever altering the balance of power in the German automotive hierarchy. That January day in 1981, when Michel Mouton carved through Monte Carlo's mountain passes at impossible speeds, wasn't just a rally, it was an announcement. It was Audi telling BMW, telling Porsche, telling the entire automotive world, "We're here, we're serious, and you're going to have to deal with us now." The images from that rally are iconic in automotive circles. Mouton's Quattro, that boxy white shape with its aggressive stance, absolutely flying through corners that would have terrified most drivers. The car looks planted, purposeful, like it's on rails even on snow and ice. Behind it, rear-wheel drive competitors look tentative by comparison, sideways, struggling. That visual contrast told the story better than any marketing campaign could. It made Quattro's advantage obvious even to people who didn't understand the technical details. You didn't need to know about center differentials or torque split to see that the Quattro was simply faster, more confident, more capable. They'd found their answer to BMW's dominance. They'd discovered their identity. And they'd proven that sometimes the most revolutionary innovations come not from the comfortable and successful, but from the desperate and determined. From those with nothing to lose and everything to prove. Today, when you see an Audi Sport Quattro or an original Quattro at a car show, it commands respect in a way that few cars do. It's not just a classic car, it's a piece of automotive history. It represents a moment when the established order was challenged and changed, when an underdog rewrote the rules. And every modern Audi with that Quattro badge, from a modest A3 to a fire-breathing RS6, carries that legacy. It's a promise that originated in desperation, was proven in competition, and has now become an expectation. That's the power of what Audi achieved. They didn't just create a technology, they created a new category, a new way of thinking about what performance cars could be.